Canby, and welcome to tonight's, I keep saying United.
We are
United. Maybe that's prophetic. Canby, thank you for attending in tonight to the Urban Renewal Agency meeting. And we're all going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now for a moment of silence for our armed forces and our people that serve in foreign service across the world. Thank you. You may be seated. Next order of business tonight is the consent agenda. Approval of minutes from September 11th, 2013.
Sir, I'll move to approve the consent agenda that include the minutes of the September 11th, 2013 meeting.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Vice Chair Hodson, seconded by Commissioner Hensley to approve the consent agenda, which includes the approval of minutes from September 11th, 2013. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda is approved. Next on our list is citizen input. Do we have any citizens that want to input tonight? I don't have any yellow cards up here. All righty, seeing none, we'll turn it over to Sue for any community announcements.
I just have a few. Public Works has asked that people not blow or rake their leaves into the street. And on our website, we have an announcement and then a link to Canby Disposal to show you how to properly put them in the brown bin. Canby Area Transit is moving next week. They will be opening for business in their new location at 195 Southeast Hazeldell Way, Suite C. It's next to Sequoia Vet Clinic. And if you have any questions, please call Kat at 266-4022. Their phone number and their mailing address will be the same. The physical location will be different. Again, that's at 195 Southeast Hazeldell Way. And then this Saturday will be Canby Public Library for Music in the Stacks, and that's going to be at 2:30. It's going to feature the group Bodacious. This is sponsored by the Friends of the Library, and they'll be playing groovy gumbo music. And I have listed here blues, rock and roll, and jazz with ethnic spices of Zydeco, Cajun, Irish, and German influences. And that's all.
All right. Well, thank you to the Friends of the Library for sponsoring that. There is something for everyone's palate there. And to our administrator, do you have any announcements, sir?
I have none.
All righty. Moving on to the agenda, new business. The only topic on our agenda tonight, I doubt that I'll make it in 7.5 minutes, is library siting update. And so for some background, most of the city council and a couple members of the library board were able to take a field trip out to Sherwood to visit their civic center, which is a combined library and city hall. The library occupies the first floor and has a mix of both high space and more traditional ceiling height. And then their city hall is up on the second floor. And we thank Amanda for arranging that tour for us. And so I'd like to start out tonight by those that went. Just feel free to offer up your observations, what you saw, what you thought, what you learned. There were pluses and minuses. It was very educational. Todd, you want that?
Yeah, I thought the facility was very nice. They took just a nice box and added some structural details that made it really nice. I think you can do the same thing here. The city side of it, though, I didn't think flowed well. I didn't care for that part of it. It seemed to be kind of cramped and didn't flow very well. But overall, I thought it was a really nice-looking space.
Mm-hmm.
As did I. It was a beautiful building. I did see some of the flaws that Commissioner Rocha saw in the flow upstairs for the City Hall. But I think that the best part of the trip was being able to look at this idea that we've been talking about in real life and talk to people who are using it and find out what they would have done different. So since we're starting at ground zero, we can course correct on some of those things and do some things differently than they did.
Very good. I would say the same thing they did. I think they have a great little downtown, very much like we do, very unique. And I think that given the space that they had, Their library fits well in the community, and I thought that was a clever use of space, the way they laid out the library, the way they incorporated the city, and I would imagine in the future, I don't know if this is a case, I was visiting with Greg about this, if their library needs were to increase in the future, would that likely push out the city? I wasn't sure if that would be the case. And then one of the features it had, I thought was clever as can be, was on the ground floor, there was a coffee shop slash donut shop slash ice cream, and you could actually take that right into the library, which I thought was really great. And it was a very pleasant place to go. So I was glad we went, and I was glad I went.
I mean, likewise, I mean, for me, having not been there before and walked in and kind of hit me as okay, this is kind of what I've been envisioning and talking about. I really liked their children's area, the consolidation. You know, Commissioner Coleman talked about the commercial access just off of there. I thought was great. A neat thing that they did in the workspace areas was the sport court floors. Kind of give it that, you know, the tile got damaged, they just pull out the tile and the one tile and put it back, and versus a bunch of anti-fatigue mats all over the place. One of the things, a number of opportunities that they shared that really, they talked about in the children's area, which I thought was great. I thought they talked about having a bathroom nearby, either like a family restroom that they could duck into, and putting the children's bookshelves on casters so that they could move them, you know, for programming or what other pieces. They're having to go through and they're redoing kind of their periodical area, newspapers, magazines, just because that was an area that seemed to be kind of dwindling. It was already pretty vacant over there, and they were having to kind of shrink that some more. And they can't expand. They are maxed out, and their service area, I think, numbers are greater than ours, and they can't go anywhere. They did express a lot of, you know, poor staff area. I think their staff area for their 14,000 square foot library was, I think, half of what we currently have in our spaces for staff is inadequate. And then they said plan for storage. Think of what you're going to need and then double it, because you're going to end up needing more of that. So I thought some of that, I mean, it was just a really great tour. So thank you, Amanda, for that, setting that up. But that was kind of my takeaways from it.
Well, I didn't get a chance to take a tour, so I had to do some book learning on this. And the one thing that I was impressed by from the librarian at Sherwood was that Canby's holdings are larger than theirs. So kind of underscore what you said about space. I would imagine that a city larger than us would have a larger collection, but she said that's something you need to understand, is that Canby's collection has grown over the years. A lot of contributions from the Friends of the Library, just private citizens, anonymous citizens. The 1776 collection, for example, came in. So I guess that's good that we've got a large collection. We have to find some place to put it.
And that was one of the things they mentioned too, that even if they brought in all the books that were out, that they would be out of, I mean, there'd be no way to put it in, because like 30% of their book inventory is checked out. And so if they were to bring it all back in, there would be no way. So I can only imagine what Canby's would be if you brought it all back in and sorted it and checked it in, where we'd be with that size. So
I don't think that's their goal.
Fines,
They want it
and that way
checked out.
people can keep their books longer.
Well, in order to not have a problem with having a quorum, I decided to go over after everybody else went, and drove over and looked it over. And I was kind of surprised for the size of the community in comparison to Canby, that they had a much smaller than what we're projecting. And I talked to Pam, what's her last name? Yeah, I can't.
Pam North, the librarian?
Yeah. And this was built in 2004, I think they said.
We moved in 6.
So it's, it's been a number of years, so, but we're still almost at the same place they were in population when they built it. And so this is something I was kind of surprised at, that I think it's the County Library Association, in order to meet their requirements, we're looking at 22 to 25,000 square feet, and theirs is 14,000 square feet. And that kind of stuck in my head. And the fact that the way it's constructed is side by side. And that was a little different than what I was.
City Hall's upstairs.
Yeah, right. And yeah, we were talking about possibly right over the library, where this is off to the side, which is, would give them their height requirement or desire. And but I was really impressed with it. It's very nice, very well constructed. So.
And if I could add to what Ken said, I think that the Sherwood Library, as I understood it, they moved out of 4,000 square feet into that library. And the one thing I'll say is that you could tell they were very, very proud of their library, and it's very upbeat, and it was just a fun experience, and some of the challenges of where they put that. I mean, they're right next to the railroad tracks on the one side, and then across a sidewalk to the American Legion building, and then they have a street out front and parking in the back. So they really have nowhere to go.
Yeah, she said they could push out the wall of the children's area, but it would only gain about 2,000 square feet, so it wouldn't even be worth the effort. It's not positioned in the town on the block in a place where they could expand.
Hope they don't get as many trains through as we do.
I'm sure they will. Oh,
The
their
train's
train
right
is
behind them,
literally right
actually.
by it, yeah.
It is, it's right behind them, actually.
Like closer than we are now.
Yeah, it's like literally right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was for me, it was a very interesting trip. It was really good to walk into a place and make it concrete for you to see what they have, in particular, high space on the smaller side of what we're picturing, but it gives you a chance to see what it would be like for us, how much room that is. Things that haven't been mentioned already that I thought were intriguing was the synergy between the two floors in terms of library patrons. It was interesting to hear that teenagers would often come in and go upstairs to City Hall. The City Hall has kind of an overlook that's railed off that looks out into the big open space. It's really a very impressive view, and they've got tables up there that the city can use for ad hoc meetings, but teenagers like to come in there and take over the tables because it's quieter and it's a better view. So it was kind of interesting and fun to see that happening back and forth. It's not like the City Hall was a locked armed camp by any means. They have a council chambers somewhat bigger than this one. Definitely nicer in terms of technology. They share that with the library. The librarians expressed that there's some frustration with making that sharing happen because there's a lot of moving of tables and chairs and things that have to go on. But yeah, those are kind of the additional things I had. Any other comments folks had on that?
I was going to say, one of the things, if she wouldn't mind, I was thinking it'd be fun to hear from Amanda, because you actually worked there, didn't you, for quite a time?
For just a few months, yeah.
Would you share with us some of your experiences with the facility?
I didn't really consider.
Now you're not her friend. She is now on camera.
Put on the spot.
So I'm Amanda Zyberg, the Assistant City Administrator and HR Director, and I did work for the City of Sherwood for almost 8 years. And about 6 months, I'd say, were in that facility. And I know one of the concerns that was big on people's mind moving into that building really has less to do with the library, more to do with the city staff, but a similar concept that we've talked about here is everybody went from several different buildings and their own private offices to more of a cubicle environment. And I think there's always mixed emotions about that. And I think it tends to open communications and encourage people to work together, which is great when you're so used to being segregated. The other thing was the combination of the library and the city offices together, and I think one of the things we heard on that tour was that they kind of anticipated that library staff anticipated they wouldn't want to, be bothered by city staff, and city staff was worried about how loud the library would be, and they'd end up not having those issues. I did hear that message. So.
Could you give a few comments about the central record storage that's there? Because we're going to hear a little bit about that tonight.
Okay. Yeah, and both our city recorder and deputy city recorder went and toured that specific area as well. So they may even have some more comments to offer, since it's really their area of expertise. But what we'd like to do here is start or have a centralized storage, and it does take a lot of space, and it's heavy, and you have to control access if you really want to do it the right way. It sounds like Sherwood grew out of theirs pretty quickly, so I know we're talking about planning for adequate space, and we'll need to make sure that we have that and access control.
Yeah, they had Frank kind of paced it off as a pretty modest 500 square feet or so, and they were full.
Right, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Hope they're
and like
past
they
full, I
said,
think.
storage, I think, I remember just in the few months that we moved in, when I first moved into that building, it became apparent that storage and space was going to become a pretty important issue. And now, 6 years later, 7 years later, people are not in the same places that they were when I was working there, so they've had to shift and move and adjust and accommodate, adapt.
Right. They also seem to have a pretty large footprint for, was it engineering and planning? Obviously, a much bigger city, growing. They had a lot of staff to accommodate.
Yeah, they have building in-house and engineering staff as well, and inspectors.
Right.
All things that we don't currently have in-house here, but might need to plan for someday.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, any other questions for Amanda?
I have one for Amanda.
He's excited.
How many square feet do you think is adequate for a city of this size as far as record storage? And
You know, I don't know. I was actually going to work with the city recorders and try to figure that out. Yeah.
Maybe Sue has that answer.
I think,
Is Sue coming up to the table next?
The bigger, the better.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we've definitely talked about too big is way better than not big enough. And we have stuff all over the place now, and they have done a fantastic job of trying to get everything as centralized as possible and archive what you can, or excuse me, get rid of what you can get rid of when the legal deadlines come in. But as much as you think we can go to an electronic world, it's really not very realistic.
Yeah, in fact, our tour guides made the comment that the paperless society's been an explosion of paper for government. So.
Yep.
Greg, did you?
Clint nailed it. That's what I was wondering. Brian, I don't remember us ever having discussed this since I've been on the council, is our storage needs. And it seems like a number out there that we should at least be chewing around, because we have some general idea of what we needed for police station, some idea about what we've, if we were going to have our planning and development when we moved it from one place to another. But it sure seems like storage is something that we should do once and do it right. And that could be a pretty big number, so we may need to think about getting a report on that sometime.
Well, that was the piece that Frank, the recent configuration was trying to address some of that storage needs for record keeping, because we are, I think, spread out amongst 3 different buildings with just our record keeping, and trying to bring that into a centralized location. And that's why the recommendation of, when we can do this and plan it, that we plan adequate space, and that it probably be a basement type situation, or so that we're not eating up, library space, or because they said the weight of trying to do all the storage on a second floor just cranks up the cost. It's cheaper to go subterranean than up on that, or eat up. That's my SAT word for the day, okay? Come on.
And in addition to the city records, when we had tour 11, and I know that Commissioner Ryder went, I don't know if anybody else went on that particular tour, but the library there said they had major storage needs. They had actually built-in storage closet areas, and they filled up immediately, and they found out that they didn't have enough storage space. So I think just for the library materials and the props, whatever that they have around, stuff for the children's stuff, programs. So definitely storage is an issue.
And that would be something that the thinking is, and Sue, I'll bring you in on this as well, that you want that on site, that you don't want to go for a less expensive piece of property, warehouse type of thing, that you could have climate controlled and security, but you want to have that adjacent to you.
Well, here's the deal.
Bottom line, brass tacks, Sue. what is it?
I serve on the Oregon Association of Municipal Recorders Records Committee and have for several years. We meet regularly with the state archivist. I'm also a member of ARMA International. So anytime you have off-site storage, you're going to have an employee go back and forth and retrieve things. Right now, there's me and Kim. If you pay a company, then you have to pay for the storage space and you have to pay to recall boxes. So every time you pull a box off the shelf, you have to pay to have it brought, and then you have to pay to have it put back.
Okay, well, I'm sold
So,
then. I just
I
hadn't.
Those are costs people might not think of.
And I thought that's where we were going. It's just, in the development of a city hall, and I've been particularly focused on a library, is that I've never put that into the equation. But I don't even know if that's a policy decision, Mr. Chair, we've talked about co-locating the city hall, and does that implicitly mean our records? By one expert's opinion, it does. So we might need a number there to figure out how deep to dig our basement.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you, Amanda.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
And that's a segue for us into, last night, the library board offered up their regular meeting time to meet with the Urban Renewal Agency. We thank you very much, see some of you here tonight, for that time. Well, we spent a couple hours talking about libraries, clearing some air, finding common ground with each other. I came away feeling like it was a good meeting. We decided to keep talking and keep moving forward. And one of the things that was presented last night was, as some may recall, I think back in August, we directed staff to work on proposals for Third Avenue. And there's been a few iterations, but with the target of tonight being the public presentation of the latest thinking. And so our administrator, Greg Ellis, worked with Frank Berg, who has had experience on the Second and First Avenue, to come up with a proposal. And that was shared last night in quite a bit of detail. But in talking with Greg today, we wanted to make sure the public got to hear about it as well. So Greg's going to walk us through a summary of that now.
Thank you. I want to say that what we're talking about, what I'm going to talk about, is Frank sees this as one project, although it's spread over 4 years, is the way he put it. And I think Amanda, we're talking about it last night and today, and she's the one that came up with that. It's like, this is one project. And the library that you're looking at is 23,875 square feet over 4 years. So you have to look at it, and that's the way that you would design it. You would do that right now. You would look at your programs, what you need in a facility, and build it into that 23,875. However, Frank's charge was to what can you do right now with the money we've got, which is just under $9 million. And that will get you 18,125 square feet. And you talked about the 3,000 square foot basement. Frank put that in there, and that was for storage, maybe some HVAC. Talking about putting the ceiling, we should also put it down there. Maybe have some people down there, but mostly it was storage and I think your mechanical equipment in the basement type of thing. He also talked about putting 8,000 square feet for administration, consolidating the admin on the second story. And we're still discussing whether that's enough, but again, his charge was to what can you do with the $9 million. We looked at the property directly behind the library. That is currently, there's a couple of businesses on there. That is included in that first phase from what you can do with the $9 million. It includes the property purchase and the second phase, I guess, or third. Second would be maybe to finish off the admin portion, the 8,000 square feet that would be second story. And then the third part of this project would be to expand the library out another 5,750 square feet. So right now, the thing we've got is $9 million to do 8,000 square foot on a second story, 3,000 square foot basement, and an 18,125 square foot library. And that was Frank's charge. And he did what he was supposed to do, came back and says, here's what you can get for your money you have now, but you should plan on the expansion, because that is part of the project, as far as he's concerned. So in a nutshell, that is what Frank's recommendation, and that was his charge, to come back with that. Can you do that? And that's what he's suggesting.
And Frank, just verifying with you, Frank put into the spreadsheet the estimated cost on designing for all the phases up front, correct?
That is correct, because you have to have that on the shelf from the beginning. Like, that's why he says this is one project. This is the project, the entire thing. It's just being built over a period of time.
What did we call it the other night? Civic Center Master Plan. That's
There
what
you
we
go.
called it last
There
night.
you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, also in his charge, he was given instructions to give priority to occupying the library,
Yes.
correct? That
Yeah.
in phase one, the library needed to be open and operational.
Correct, and that would be part of the first phase. That would be the first, when it opens, that would be, the library would move into that 18,125 square feet. The second story would not be completed yet. That would start in November of 2015, per Frank's schedule, and that would be finished. Admin would then move into that section. And then in 2017, the start would be for the 5,750 additional feet. And not necessarily part of Frank's charge and discussion last night, but something, and you'll probably get into this, but one of the things we're going to have to do is look at property purchase, if we're going to do that. 5,750 square feet. And for the final part of that project, we'd have to purchase, as we would the property right behind the library. So the two properties right behind the library would have to be purchased. And he did put some of that in the budget,
Yes,
property purchase.
saw that there. Alrighty. So there it is in a nutshell. Just wanted to emphasize the library in phase one is occupied. It's all on the first floor.
Yep.
Part of it's low space, part of it's high space.
Correct.
The city administration portion is shelled out, but
Yep.
not yet ready for occupancy. That's phase two.
Correct.
Okay. Would other commissioners like to share their thoughts on that proposal? I know we talked a lot about it last night. Give you another opportunity.
Yeah, I actually would. I learned a long time ago in construction, you never offend an architect. It's just bad news. I'd like to talk, and Frank's not here, obviously, to talk to him about construction costs, because I think the 250 a square foot is high, in my opinion. Talking to some architects that I've dealt with, Ankrum, Moyson, Meyer Group, who've done public libraries before, their range is from 150 to 175, and the high end at 200. So, I mean, at 200, we're saving a lot of money. You can almost build everything you're looking for in phase one instead of having to shell it out and do a TI later. I think if you do a CMGC contract, bring that contractor in at the beginning, this is our budget, and you can work with them to design, build the MEPs, and get to that number. I mean, you're saving, it's probably $1 million worth of savings right there.
Right. Very good. Yeah, it's interesting. I think Mayor Hodson and I had some conversation, I think, with Greg and with Frank about that. And Frank did fairly say his job is not to underestimate. So
Always want to overestimate.
they
I get
are-
that.
They are conservative numbers. He
Yeah,
gave us
absolutely.
that. And he likewise encouraged that the best thing to do is start bringing on a CMGC, a construction person who can really work on those cost and material selections. Yeah.
Which makes it, I think, important to have everything on the shelf when you go in, because if you have those savings, you can go as far as the money will take you, that saving. So,
Yep, absolutely.
No, I think thoughts from last night and just in general, I think the meeting last night was very good. I think it was good to have conversation and definitely know where the board is at. I think that the phrase we're looking here is, it is that it's one project phased in over a couple of phases. And I think it is, master planning is probably the appropriate term for the Third Avenue project when we talk about storage spaces and what our office space needs would be up on the second floor, and who would make that up. Is that, beyond City Hall and finance and planning? Is that court? Is it not court? Is it, so what are those other office areas that we would need to be thinking about? And, Sherwood made the comment of running into problems with, or that they have, planning, building inspector, the electrical stuff, or electrician, which someday we may need to have. We don't know. I'd hate to get in that situation where we can't expand city offices. And that was a concern with the previous project was, we all move into 11,000 square feet. What happens when we add people? Are we back to where we're trying to find a space again to grow into? I think we figured out that the library space, it's a 60%, over a 60% increase in space
In the first phase.
in the first phase, which is a lot. And an end game, if we can get to that 20,875, I think would be great. I think walking into Sherwood, what we're talking about here is but it is what I think I've been kind of envisioning and thinking that we can do. But I think it is that master planning piece that we need to do. I think the first piece we don't want to go down the road and have another set of pretty pictures and drawings and then if we get a piece of property on Second, we could do that one because we have all the pictures for that, or if we have all the property, or when we line up all the property, we could do Third. I think we line up the property and then do what we can. I think something that came out of the conversation last night was the referral to the voters piece. And if we go to the voters, I think the May ballot is a good one to get on. That means we got to be ready to go by March. So I think we've got to be able to, if we're going to do that, then we should be able to know that we can lock down the property. We should be able to put forth at least the scope of what it could look like and whatnot, so that we know what we're putting into on the ballot for people to consider. So I think those are some of the pieces that I came away with last night, and kind of looking to move forward on it, and that kind of keep that momentum going. So that's kind of what my takeaways were.
And I think that gives us time, if it is a May ballot, to hire a new library director. Because, that was a pretty important piece last night that they discussed, was library director, before we go too far, and that would probably buy us that time to bring that person on board.
And I was just going to say, too, I think, for a lot of folks that are, put their time and energy and heart and soul into the Second Avenue project, I think, if we look back and, probably some wonder, why can't we consider that? Well, for one, we didn't have the land all locked up. That was number one, real important. We couldn't reach council approval to go with that plan. And it didn't meet the Planning Commission's second story issue. So those three things kind of eliminate that, in my view, from being able to move forward. And what I also took away from last night, loud and clear, was we should have the land locked down before we pursue the project. So that's kind of what I got.
Permission to ask a semi-related but not really urban renewal question, because it's on my brain.
Great, I'm sure we'll answer.
I've been meaning to ask Greg this, so I want to do it before I forget. Well, just that the IGA for the operation funds that we get for the county has a list of requirements, and one of them is a library director. So I am wondering, Is there a provision in there? Do we have a window of time? And if so, what is the size of the window to get a new one hired before they say your funding's in jeopardy?
And I don't know what that time frame would be, but if it says you have to have a library, if we're actively pursuing that, they're not gonna have an issue
That buys
with
us a little time,
Yeah,
just the
they're-
fact that we're looking?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we're pursuing.
So I don't want them
getting
going, "Hey,
board.
you're not meeting the
We still got the money
requirements."
in our checking account.
That's
So-
true. They have to ask for a refund,
I'm not
right?
worried about it.
Okay, I was just wondering if we knew what
Yeah,
that
that's a
time
good
frame was.
question. But they just say you have to have a library director, but if we're in between, obviously, they're going to take that into account.
Okay, I just wondered
Yeah.
if there was going to be a time where they put some heat on us to hurry up and get one.
So we still got the money. So,
I
yeah.
I guess a point
Okay.
of reference for us too, I asked Greg earlier today, we have bonded the money. So we currently have that money. And I know it's been a topic of, well, we have it, we're paying interest on that money. Obviously, we want to put it to work as quickly as we can. And another piece to last night that came out was, we want to be thorough and correct versus fast. And I think that, Commissioner Hensley had mentioned that before, that we maybe were chugging too quickly down the train tracks here. And so, with that said, one of the questions that I asked Greg today was, what's our window? The bonding we took out included monies for Sequoia and redoing some of the debt, and we've spent some of that bonded money on Sequoia. And so he thinks we've bought ourselves about 3 years of time before the bondholders start coming in and knocking on our doors, wondering when we're going to spend the rest of it, and even that might be a loose-ended amount of time. So, not that I want to wait 3 years on us planning something, but just that we do have the debt, what is the word I'm looking for? We are paying interest on that money, but at the same time, we do have a little bit of time, a little bit of flex time, so that we're not worried about, oh my gosh, we have to spend it all in a year before we have to meet our obligations. But
And
I
while
put
we
that
wait,
on.
we're getting some interest back.
We're getting some interest
So
on that.
we're not losing money by waiting, we're being smart.
Well, yeah.
Yes,
I mean,
we want something for our investment. We will get something for our investment, but
well, undoubtedly, by putting it to work, we'll get a quicker return on it, hopefully. Right, Clint? We want it working for us. But at the
Saying
same
we should
time,
give it to Clint to invest?
no.
Probably get us a better interest rate.
Well, my money's still on buying property. And, they're not making any more dirt.
Point I was making to somebody today, I forgot who it was, that that money that interest is getting paid out no matter what. I mean, that is what our payment is. Whether you build anything, that money is going out, or not going out, but you have an annual payment that you make, and it's averaging so much per day. So, and to your point about, how much time we have to spend it, one of the things that you can't do is take money and put it in the bank. It's called arbitrage. And if you are making money on bonded money, that is a no-no, because it's like you just put it in the bank. You've told investors you're going to do something, put it in the bank. We're in negative arbitrage right now, so we don't even have to report what our arbitrage is. If we were making more than 2.86%, which we're not, we're making 0.55, then we have to start reporting to the IRS what our arbitrage is. We're not in that position.
Right.
So we've got time to get that money spent, although you do have to make sure that you get it spent and not keep it in the bank, because those interest rates could change. And you've told your bondholders that you will be doing a project. Although, like I said, you're going to be paying that payment no matter what you build or don't build. So, does that make sense? I mean, it's,
Absolutely.
So, but you do have to watch it. You do have to get the money spent.
Yeah. One of the things that, again, that we're between what we have and the full crux of the master plan or the execution of the one project is, there's a significant, I mean, there's a money gap. And I think that's something that the commissioners and really the city council needs to consider and discuss as well as part of conversation on, what options there are and what are ways to close that gap. And I don't know if that's something that we want to charge our URA director to come back with us, next month and say, here are options to close that gap. Here's some of the tough decisions that we have before us to bring that to fruition. I think that would be, I'm looking ahead, I think the pieces are securing the property, looking at master planning, the Third Avenue location, and how do we close that financial gap to make it happen. That's kind of what I see as the steps or pieces that we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, not as chair, but for me personally, an integral part of our master plan is the funding plan. And, because I want a plan that's fundable, does that make sense? And what are our options to get there? And there's actually a surprising number of options out there, and I know our administrator has talked to us about some of those in the past. So I, for one, would be interested in having staff go to work on that. I don't know how soon they can return, if November's reasonable or if December or what's reasonable. But to me, anyway, that's a vital part, is how do we get all these phases funded in a timely manner? Other thoughts? So in terms of moving forward, I'm looking for temperature check. I'm looking for some consensus. Do we as a body have enough confidence, and just to be honest, do we feel good enough about a Third Avenue option that we're willing to nod to our administrator and say, start proceeding down the path of securing property? Which Greg can tell us the details. In my mind, at a minimum, that's getting appraisals and talking to some owners.
You make the final decision. It comes into executive session. You come out and make a decision on where you go. But I absolutely can start talking to those owners, and appraisals, I think, would be a good place to start.
So thoughts on that, commissioners? Does that seem like a prudent first step? We have the confidence to go ahead and proceed down that far?
Yes.
That seemed to be, again, with the meeting last night, that seemed to be kind of, our thoughts, library board's thoughts were, let's not go down to doing the architectural design and all those things, and that's all the cart before the horse stuff that got us into the weeds before. So I think that is the first step that we do.
I think it's a reasonable first step, Tim. I haven't heard anything about a public process, though. And I've left the meeting a tad confused as to what level of support the library was, and I think that's worth a discussion. Is this commission, is this council willing to proceed without the enthusiastic support of its library board, which by ordinance is charged with the planning of facilities? And then whether you envision any sort of public hearings, public outreach. I know the 3 meetings that we did for the library was inadequate for some people, that it was criticized as not being sufficient. So I'd like to not have that criticism on anything we do again.
I agree. And thank you for bringing that up. Since asked, I'll share my 1 of 7 opinion. I do think that public process is important. We do have a lot of hard work that already has gone in to some design. That's one of the reasons why I feel comfortable with going ahead with Third Avenue. I don't feel like we're starting completely over. We do have the benefit of a lot of hours from FFA, a lot of hours and passion from Penny into thoughts on what the design should be. Some different dimensions now to deal with, but we're not at ground zero. But yeah, we do need that, and I am very, I want badly for good consensus with the library board and the URA.
Well, I have to commend you, Mr. Chair, for your meeting last night. There are a lot of chairs around the world who would not ask an advisory board, is there anything bad you have to say about us, and if so, what is it? And keep talking until you're done. But that's what you did last night, and I think that did a long way towards bridging, starting us on a process of working with the library board. And the mayor's comments yesterday, I think, as well, of all of us trying to moderate our tone and get our heads down and try and do what we want. Tracy, I like what you said today of a civic center master plan. I always struggled every time we were talking about a library plan, having to put a comma and then say, but we're talking about more. So I like that a lot. And then finally, Brian, I liked last night where you defended the idea that even though in a changing digital age there may be some question about a traditional role of a library, but what we are really talking about is programs areas where people can get together, we can have book readings, that we can have a community. And the fact that you're on board for something like that goes a long way in my book to say that I'm willing to go along. But I think we have more work to do with the community, repairing feelings, and trying to get people back on. But the meeting that you ran last night, Tim, I think convinced me that it's worth a run up those stairs again.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much.
Mr. Chair, if I could add too, I think locking down the property is really important. I think, being diligent and finding a top-notch library director and getting them firmly involved in the process, because we're very fortunate to have a great library board, great friends of the library, and we want to be friends with those friends.
Well put, Clint. Well put.
Mr. Chair, question?
Sure.
I wholeheartedly agree we need to have property secure before we get to planning, because that was one of the biggest missteps in the last plan. My only question is at what point, how much do we need to do before we refer to the voters?
Yeah.
We don't want to get too far down the road and then it appear that we're not going to go to the voters, when that's been something many of us have said is important. So I don't know if that's a question to Mr. Ellis or what. How far down the road can we go before we go, okay, here's where we have to break off and ask the public?
It's actually the next question on my list. So
Okay.
We're gonna do it. So Greg, you've heard some temperature taking, some consensus. Do you and Sue need a motion, or are you okay with the direction you have?
No, we're okay, I think, with the direction we have. You said to go out and look at securing that property. That doesn't mean paying for it right now, just making
Right.
sure that you've got some willing sellers.
And we need as much information as we can to put together the presentation to the voters.
Right.
We have to have an informed, and a lot of, all the information in place, so you have a complete ballot title with the description as it
Right.
includes property. So we would need to have that information, but.
So, yeah, kind of my next question on the list for the evening was, we can't decide it tonight, but what I'm looking for again is some consensus here. The proper order to ask it in would be, is there a strong enough consensus on the agency that we do desire taking our best plan out to the voters to get their permission? And I'm looking for head nods. I'm not looking for a roll call vote, but
I have a question. I wasn't at the meeting last night, and it was mentioned about the board and the council coming together and being in agreement. What was the consensus of the board? I mean, we've got to have a consensus here, but was there a consensus to go ahead with your proposal?
Greg, would you like to offer your perception?
Well, we did go through quite a bit of process of history, which I thought was a good thing. There does not seem to be consensus on the library board of going out to a vote. Roger Reif said that, paraphrasing him, but there are some things that are not, that don't fit well with populism. You know, if you have a major question, you know, do you want a death penalty or not? That's a global question, but if you've got something that involves reverse arbitrage and you're trying to explain all these things, it might be something that might not be suitable. The other thing that the board said is that it's open to further discussions. So I think that's the clearest consensus I could make, Tim, is that there's concern that it's too small. But I don't think it was presented the same way that Greg presented it tonight, that it seemed more like 3 demountable positions rather than a unified plan. And I think that would make it a more palatable sort of thing. So I think we are on as good of talking terms as we've been in a long time with our friends.
I stole the one project idea from Amanda.
Give Amanda credit.
And if I could add to Ken's
That's her idea.
comments, they would rather, in my view, see us not do this project than do an inadequate project. So in other words, they pointed out strongly, we need to do this right.
Does this 18,000 square feet appear adequate to them?
No.
Based on, it's not, because
But the full plan might be, as Greg was
Yeah,
saying.
and
it's
I
a-
think that may have been a disconnect last night.
So too.
Is that the 18,000 is inadequate. And they never got to the question of is if we went to full phase. Because I just think there was the question of, you know, we don't own the property. Can we own the property? You know, can we guarantee that this is ever going to be beyond 18,000 square feet? And the conversation got kind of mired there. I would venture, based on my knowledge of the past discussions that I've had with library board members, that if there was an assurance that we could build out to 22,000, that is certainly something that they would, and the library board chair said that, John Drott. He's at 22,000 is the bare minimum for what they considered adequate. So.
I think you go back to Chairman Dale's comments too, one of the things you're gonna have to look at is funding, you know. You don't have the money now, so plan for that. How are you gonna do it? This is, I think you have the opinion that this is gonna happen. How are you gonna make it happen in terms of funding? So,
Yeah, and I'll confess that, as most of you know, I don't like debt. I just don't, but I confess that I've been challenged, and righteously so, that when a group, I think Greg said it to me, Frank has said it to me, when you have a group, especially a group potentially as powerful as the agent, emotionally powerful as the agency and the library board together, when you have a group of unified, passionate people, you will find money. There is a will and there is a heart, and you will succeed. And so I've had to calm down a little and and keep my mind open that we need to look at some ways to get there, because we all want to get there. Did I trouble you?
Well, I'm moving on now to the next step down the road about the referral. That if we vote out a referral, does it come with the full support and backing of all of the members of the council? Only a couple of us were here when the Blue Heron District went out for a vote, and they had dueling commissioners come in saying, I support it, I don't. Kind of lowered your confidence level in wanting to go out and put a yes vote. So I'm just wondering if, for all of us on the commission, if we put this out to a vote, does that mean we all support it? Or are we just setting it up to then say, okay, it's out there, but now I want you to vote against it? To me, that's a big difference. I'd rather take my chances with an up or down vote on the council and the commission than to go out there with anything less than us saying a referral means we're 100% behind it. We all support it. We want our constituents to support it. Does that make sense? Did I say that right?
It does.
You did.
It does indeed.
And I agree with that statement. I think that we have to be. I think we've got to be. I think, as we said, our to use a Clintism, our friends of friends need to be. We all need to be collaborative and going forward. I've as I said last night, I've been out talking with stakeholders already and shared this with the chamber and the chamber board. And yeah, I mean, if I have to spend March and April going and doing my own door-to-door campaign, and I'm prepared to do that. I don't want. This is an idea that I have put forward, so yeah, I'm very invested in this, and I do want to see it succeed, and yeah, so as far as I'm concerned,
Thank you.
I will pass
What I was-
flyers. I'll do a bake sale.
Well, getting the chamber on board would
I
be
will-
a nice thing.
Well, I'll go to work on the chamber board and see what I can do. So, I'll cut grass even if I have to.
Other thoughts folks are willing to share? You don't have to. Clint?
I think this is, in the perfect world, I think that, the bond issue would have been voted on by the people before the bonds were issued, but that boat's already left the beach. I would say that my fear in sending it out to the people is if it's not properly written, it could get killed on arrival. And I am not afraid to make decisions because I firmly believe doing the right thing is always the right thing to do, and I'm confident in our ability to do the right thing. So I don't fear pursuing this without going to a vote of the people, given that the money is already in the bank. So that's where
Yeah, I'd probably draw that same distinction, that I'd certainly be open for future phases if we were to go further into debt. But I just think, especially given the complexity of where we find ourselves, that if we wait till next May and this is defeated, and then we come up with a plan C, and now we start having some time issues to our back. So I'd be more comfortable on phase one of having this be a legislative decision.
Others?
You know where I am.
Yeah, I'll share where I'm at. I don't always obviously agree that the best expense of UR money is for non-TIF generating things. On the other hand, if I ask permission of the debt ower, I'm okay with it. And if I'm willing to ask, then I'm willing to put my passion into doing the very best plan and marketing that plan with full confidence to the people. And so I will be behind it. I will support it. But I need to ask permission. And I think that's about the most concise way I can say where I am. So I'm not in the, I think to maybe directly address Commissioner Parker's concern, I'm not a person that will sit up here and vote to refer it to the people and then campaign against it or vote against it. If that makes sense to folks.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of an all-in.
And that's how I feel also, that if we refer it to the people and the people state their desire for a library, I'm in full support of their decision. They want to go into debt, that's fine. I may not want to, but I will support their decision.
But we're already in debt. It's whether we're going to use this money is the question. And
Well,
if someone says, Counselor, do you think I should support this? You're going to say what?
If the majority of the people turn it down, say they don't want a library, we can take that, according to what I understood of the individuals that testified about the use of the URD money that we already have that's bonded, we can use that for other areas in the URD.
Thank you.
That would definitely benefit the whole community. And not to say that a library won't if everybody uses the library, but everybody's going to use the roads, the infrastructure, and things like that, you know, in the city. And that's the point I'm looking at, is if we have an overwhelming, you know, rejection of the library or an overwhelming approval of it, I will go along with their approval. If they reject it, that means we have to use that money in some other area, and we can do that.
I'm still not
think-
easy with your answer, though, I hear you saying that if voters approve it, you'll support their position.
I'll go along with
Either
their
way.
position.
But when it's on the ballot and during the campaign, are you going to be out there saying you should vote for this?
I'm going to say that's up to you to decide what
see,
you want to do.
I'd
I mean,
go
this
for it
is,
up or down. Because
it's like, I don't go around asking people, who did you vote for in the last election? That's none of my business.
I'm not talking about who.
And
I'm saying is, if people say, is this a good idea? Do you think I should support this? Do you support this? What are you going to say?
This plan.
Because Tim and Brian and myself have already said, yeah, we're going to go
Yeah,
out there,
and
we're going to go door to door, we're going to say, put yes
I'm going to
vote.
say, if the majority want this, I'll support it. I'll be behind it if the majority support it. If the majority goes against it, the people have spoken. That's what I will.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, you go ahead.
Sorry. I totally understand what Commissioner Ryder is saying, and I think that the piece that might be missing there is, are we going to be in a position where if a passerby in the grocery store